They called her the Trainee, a thin, silent female soldier pushed to the back of the formation in a desert boiling with artillery fire and scorching sand. No one looked at her for more than 2 seconds. No one asked her name, until the commander shouted for call signs. She lifted the radio, her voice steady and cold as the desert night whined. Desert Serpent has locked target. The entire platoon froze, not from fear of the enemy, but because that name should have disappeared years ago, along with shots that never missed. The C-130 engines screamed against thin air as Staff Sergeant Marcus Brennan studied the new face across the cargo bay. She sat alone at the far end, field pack at her feet, rifle secured vertical against her shoulder. No patches, no insignia beyond rank, no combat ribbons. "That's our augment?" Corporal Jake Hendricks muttered beside him. "She looks like she just finished basic." Specialist Amy Valdez leaned in. "Her file came through this morning. Transfer from somewhere. Half the pages are redacted." "Redacted means desk job," Hendricks said. "Means she pissed someone off and got sent here as punishment." The woman, her name tape read Calloway, stared straight ahead. Not at them, not at anything. Her face held no expression. Her hands rested loose on her thighs, fingers occasionally twitching as if counting something invisible. Brennan had seen that look before. Combat vets sometimes developed it, but her record showed no deployments, no field time, nothing that would earn that 1,000-yard stare. The loadmaster's voice crackled. 5 minutes to drop zone. The platoon stood, checked gear, formed up. Calloway rose last, movements economical and precise. She took her position at the rear without being told, as if she already knew where people like her belonged. "Listen up," Lieutenant Grayson called over the engine noise. "We're reinforcing 2nd Battalion. They've been engaged for 72 hours. Hostile forces have been using the terrain dunes, wadis, abandoned structures to mount hit-and-run attacks. Our job is to secure Grid 7 and hold it until the supply convoy reaches the forward base." He glanced toward Calloway. "We've got one augment for this mission. She'll handle communications and observation. No direct engagement unless I give the order. Everyone else, standard combat formation." Questions? No one spoke. The ramp dropped. Hot air blasted through the cargo bay, carrying sand and the smell of diesel. The desert stretched endlessly, rippling with heat shimmer, broken only by rocky outcrops and the distant smudge of destroyed vehicles. They moved out in 2 columns, spacing tight but not clustered. Brennan led the right flank. Calloway fell in behind the main body, radio pack bouncing against her shoulders, rifle slung muzzle down. "Shouldn't she be up front if she's our comms?" Valdez asked. "Grayson wants her where she can't screw up," Hendricks said. "Smart." 3 hours into the march, the heat became physical, a crushing weight that made breathing feel like inhaling hot wool. Sweat soaked through uniforms, water consumption climbed. The terrain offered no shade, no relief. Calloway drank less than anyone else. She moved without apparent effort, her gait unchanged despite the temperature climbing past 120 degrees. When they stopped for a brief rest, she remained standing, scanning the horizon with small, methodical movements of her head. "You good?" Brennan asked her directly, the first words anyone had spoken to her since loading the aircraft. "Yes, Sergeant." "You've trained in desert environments before?" "Yes, Sergeant." "Where?" She paused half a second, multiple locations. Not an answer. Brennan let it drop. By late afternoon, they reached Grid 7, a shallow depression surrounded by low ridges, with sight lines stretching 2 kilometers in most directions. Defensible, but exposed. "Perimeter positions," Grayson ordered. "Fighting holes every 50 meters. Calloway, you're with headquarters element. Set up communications." She nodded and moved toward the center of the position, unpacking the radio with practiced efficiency. No fumbling, no checking the manual. She assembled the antenna, aligned the dish, and had encrypted comms with battalion within 6 minutes. Brennan watched her work. "Desk job?" His ass. As the sun began its descent, painting the desert in shades of orange and purple, the platoon settled into defensive positions. Calloway sat cross-legged beside the radio, eating an MRE without comment, eyes constantly moving across the landscape. "Think she'll last out here?" Valdez asked Brennan quietly. "She's lasted this long." "That's not what I mean." First contact, she'll freeze up. They always do. Brennan didn't respond. He'd seen plenty of soldiers fold under fire, and plenty more prove everyone wrong. You couldn't tell which was which until the moment arrived. But something about Calloway bothered him. Not her silence, plenty of good soldiers stayed quiet. Not her isolation, some people preferred solitude. It was the way she moved, the way she observed. Like someone who'd already fought this battle and was just waiting for everyone else to catch up. The desert night fell fast, temperature plummeting 40 degrees within an hour. Stars emerged, sharp and clear without the pollution of civilization. Wind picked up, carrying sand that hissed against equipment. Calloway remained at the radio, monitoring frequencies, occasionally making notes in a small weatherproof notebook. She wore no jacket despite the cold, didn't shiver, didn't complain. Weird one, Hendricks muttered, settling into his sleeping bag nearby. Creeps me out. Get some sleep, Brennan said. We've got watch rotation in 4 hours. But he stayed awake longer than he should have, watching Calloway's silhouette against the stars, wondering what kind of soldier shows up with a blank record and the skills of a veteran. The attack came at 0430, precisely when human alertness bottomed out. Not a major assault. Probing fire, 3 or 4 shooters, launching rounds from a ridgeline 800 meters northeast. Bullets cracked overhead, kicking up sand near the perimeter. "Contact northeast!" Brennan shouted, rolling into his fighting position. "Return fire! Controlled bursts!" The platoon responded instantly, rifles barking into the darkness. Muzzle flashes lit the ridgeline, revealing shapes moving between rocks. "Suppressing fire," Grayson called. "Keep them pinned." Calloway hadn't moved. She remained beside the radio, prone now, rifle still slung. She held a small monocular to her eye, sweeping slowly across the terrain. "Calloway, get your weapon up," Valdez yelled. She didn't respond. The monocular continued its methodical scan, not toward the obvious muzzle flashes, but south, 45 degrees off target. Brennan fired another burst, then glanced at her. "What are you looking at?" "Tire tracks?" she said quietly. "Fresh. 3 vehicles. They circled our position 2 hours ago." "What?" "The shooters on the ridge are a distraction. The real assault will come from the south in approximately 90 seconds. Grayson overheard through the command net. "Calloway, this is not the time for speculation. Stay on comms and—" "South side," Calloway said, voice still flat but slightly louder. "Heavy weapons team. They're using the suppressing fire to mask their approach." "I don't see anything," Hendricks said. "Thermal signature. Check your optics." Valdez swung her weapon-mounted thermal sight toward the south. Her breath caught. "Holy shit, she's right. I've got 3. No, 4 heat signatures moving up the wadi. One of them's carrying something big." Grayson's jaw tightened. "Brennan, shift half your team south, now." They moved fast, but not fast enough. The southern attackers had closed to 300 meters before being detected. One of them raised a rocket-propelled grenade launcher. Calloway shifted her position, unslung her rifle, adjusted the elevation knob with 2 precise clicks. "Calloway, you do not have clearance to." She fired once. The sound was sharp and clean. 700 meters away, the man with the RPG collapsed backward, the weapon tumbling from his hands. The warhead detonated on impact with the rocks. A bright orange fireball that briefly turned night into day. The remaining attackers scattered immediately, abandoning their assault. The entire platoon stopped firing. Silence fell across the desert, broken only by wind and the crackle of burning fuel. "What the hell was that?" Grayson's voice was tight. Calloway ejected the spent casing, chambered a new round, and returned the rifle to safe. Threat eliminated. No friendly casualties. "I didn't give you permission to engage. You were about to lose soldiers. That's not your call." She didn't argue, didn't defend herself. She simply turned back to the radio and resumed monitoring frequencies as if nothing had happened. Brennan approached her position. That was a 700-meter shot in darkness with iron sights. 683 meters, she corrected quietly. Wind from the northeast at 8 knots. Temperature 51 degrees. Elevation compensation required 1 MOA adjustment. "Who are you?" She looked at him then, really looked at him, and he saw something in her eyes he couldn't name. Not pride, not satisfaction, Something colder. Someone who doesn't miss, she said. Morning light revealed more than Grayson wanted to see. The tire tracks Calloway had mentioned were clear now, deep ruts in the sand where vehicles had circled the position during darkness, probably conducting reconnaissance. The ridgeline where the initial fire had come from showed evidence of a prepared position, not a hasty ambush. They knew we were here before we arrived, Brennan said, studying the tracks. Grayson nodded grimly. Battalion intelligence was wrong. This isn't hit and run. They're coordinating. We need to relocate, Calloway said. Every head turned toward her. She stood apart from the group, studying the surrounding terrain through binoculars. Excuse me? Grayson said. This position is compromised. They've mapped our defensive layout. Next assault will be multi-directional with prepared fire support. Current casualties projection is 63% within first 30 minutes of engagement. I didn't ask for your assessment. You should have. She lowered the binoculars. There's a canyon network 2 kilometers west. Narrower approaches, better cover, access to high ground for observation. We can establish interlocking fields of fire that... Enough. Grayson's voice cut like a blade. Your communication support, not tactical planning. We're holding this position as ordered. With respect, sir, your orders will get people killed. The air went electric. Several soldiers shifted uncomfortably. You didn't speak to an officer that way, not in the field, not ever. Grayson stepped closer to her, voice low and dangerous. You want to end your career right here, Private Calloway? Because that's exactly where you're headed. We're holding this position. Battalion needs Grid 7 secured for the supply convoy. That's the mission. You don't get to rewrite it because you fired one lucky shot. Calloway held his gaze for a long moment. Then she nodded once. Understood, sir. She turned and walked back to the radio. Christ, Valdez whispered. She's got balls. I'll give her that. She's got a death wish, Hendricks muttered. Talking to an officer like that. Brennan said nothing. He was watching Calloway's back, the set of her shoulders, the way she moved. Not defeated, not chastened, just waiting. The temperature climbed as morning wore into afternoon. 115 degrees, 120. The rocks became too hot to touch. Heat shimmer made the horizon liquid and unstable. The wind shifted at 1300 hours. Calloway noticed first. She stood abruptly, turning her face into the breeze, eyes narrowing. Sergeant Brennan, she called. He crossed to her position. What? Winds changed direction. Coming from the east now. Do you smell that? He inhaled deeply. Under the sand and heat, something else. Something chemical. What is that? Diesel. Heavy equipment. She pointed east. They're moving something big. Probably within 5 kilometers. Could be our supply convoy. Wrong direction. Convoy approaches from the south. She checked her watch. And they're not due for another 6 hours. Brennan relayed the information to Grayson. The lieutenant dismissed it. Probably civilian traffic. There are still towns operating in this region. Sir, we should at least send out a patrol too. Negative. We're not splitting our forces based on speculation from someone who can't follow orders. Calloway turned away without comment, but Brennan saw her jaw tighten fractionally. The afternoon dragged on. Soldiers sought shade where none existed, rationed water, tried to rest despite the heat. Calloway remained alert, periodically scanning the terrain, making notes in her small notebook. At 1600 hours, she spoke again. They're staging. What? Valdez asked. East position. 3 kilometers out. They're gathering forces. Calloway's voice remained level, but something had changed in her posture, a coiling readiness, like a spring being compressed. Large assault. Tonight. Maybe 2 hours after sunset. How the hell could you know that? Hendricks demanded. Dust patterns, vehicle movement, radio chatter on unsecured frequencies. She gestured toward her notebook. They're being deliberate, methodical. This won't be another probe. Grayson overheard. Calloway, if you can't control yourself, I'll have you confined to. Do what you want, sir. But you should move this platoon before 2000 hours. We're not moving. Then you should prepare for significant casualties. The silence that followed was thick enough to cut. Grayson's face flushed red despite the heat. Get out of my sight. Now. Calloway gathered her notebook and walked to the perimeter's edge, sitting alone in the sand, staring east into the gathering dusk. Brennan found himself standing beside Grayson. "Sir, what if she's right?" "She's not. She's a washout, trying to make herself important." The lieutenant's voice was tight. "I've seen her type before. All theory, no experience. We follow the mission plan." But as the sun began to set and the temperature dropped, Brennan couldn't shake the feeling that they'd just made a terrible mistake. The enemy came at 1945 hours, 15 minutes earlier than Calloway predicted. They came from 3 directions simultaneously: north, east, and south coordinated assault teams with heavy weapons support. Mortar rounds began falling first, walking across the defensive position with methodical precision. "Incoming!" Brennan shouted, diving for cover as explosions ripped through the sand. The platoon returned fire, muzzle flashes strobing in the darkness. Tracer rounds drew red lines across the night. Radio chatter became chaotic. Status reports, casualty calls, ammunition counts. Grayson was on the command net. "All positions, hold your ground. Focus fire on the eastern approach." But the eastern approach was a diversion. The real assault came from the north, exactly where Calloway had suggested repositioning earlier. A technical, a pickup truck with a heavy machine gun mounted in the bed, crested the ridge at high speed, weapon already firing. The .50 caliber rounds were devastating. They punched through sandbags, shredded equipment, forced the defenders to hunker deep in their fighting positions. "We need to take out that technical," Valdez screamed over the noise. Calling for fire support, Grayson's voice was strained. "Battalion, this is Viper 2-1, requesting immediate artillery on grid." "Negative, Viper 2-1. Artillery is engaged with priority targets. You're on your own for the next 20 minutes. 20 minutes might as well have been 20 hours. The technical was systematically destroying their defensive position, forcing them to keep their heads down while the assault teams advanced. Brennan tried to line up a shot, but the vehicle was moving too fast, weaving between rocks. He fired anyway, missed, fired again. The rounds sparked off the truck's hood. Calloway appeared beside him, moving in a low crouch. She carried her rifle and nothing else, no pack, no extra gear. "What are you doing?" he demanded. She didn't answer. She moved past him to an exposed position 30 meters forward, dropped prone on a flat rock, and brought the rifle to her shoulder in one fluid motion. "Calloway, get back here," Grayson's voice on the radio. The technical was 800 meters out now, closing fast. Its machine gun swept back and forth, pinning down multiple positions. The driver knew his business, never holding a steady course, using terrain to mask his approach. Calloway waited. The technical crested a small rise, airborne for half a second, suspended against the starlit sky. She fired. One shot. The driver's head snapped back. The technical swerved violently, its front wheel catching on a boulder. The vehicle flipped, machine gun tearing free, fuel tank rupturing, secondary explosion. Flames painted the desert orange. The hostile assault team saw their support vehicle destroyed and immediately broke contact, withdrawing in good order, but no longer pressing the attack. Calloway stood, chambered a new round, and walked calmly back to the defensive perimeter. Every member of the platoon was staring at her. "You just..." Hendricks couldn't finish the sentence. 800-meter shot, Brennan said quietly. "Moving target. Darkness. 1 round." Grayson appeared, face twisted with anger. "You fired without authorization. You could have drawn more fire onto our position. You could have." "I saved your platoon," Calloway said, her voice finally carrying an edge. "You can court-martial me later. Right now, you need to call in our position update and request immediate medevac for Corporal Hayes' shrapnel in his left leg. Probably severed his femoral artery based on the blood pattern. He has approximately 4 minutes before he bleeds out." Grayson's mouth opened and closed. Then he spun toward the casualty collection point. "Medic! Hayes is critical!" The medic was already running. Calloway returned to the radio as if nothing had happened, but Brennan saw her hands shaking slightly as she adjusted the frequency dial, not from fear, from something else, something that looked like old pain resurfacing. Valdez approached her carefully. "How did you make that shot?" "Practice." "That's not an answer." Calloway looked up at her, and in the firelight from the burning technical, her face was expressionless. Sometimes, it's the only answer that matters. Lieutenant Grayson sat alone in the command post, a shallow fighting hole covered with a camo net staring at his tablet. The encrypted personnel file on the screen made no sense. Name, Calloway, J. Rank, Private First Class. Service record, redacted. Deployments, redacted. Awards and decorations, redacted. Special qualifications, redacted. Everything was redacted except her name, rank, and basic training completion date. Everything. He scrolled down to the assignment history. Most of it was blacked out, but he could see fragments. Attached to redacted for operations in. Specialized training in redacted and advanced. Incident resulted in redacted casualties and subsequent. Recommended for redacted, but request was denied due to. Current assignment represents redacted pending review by. It was like reading a document that had been halfway shredded. Sir? Brennan appeared at the fighting hole entrance. You wanted to see me? Come in. Close that flap. Brennan complied, settling onto an ammunition crate. What's going on? What do you know about Calloway? Just what everyone else knows. She transferred in, files mostly classified, and she shoots like someone who's been doing it for a very long time. Grayson turned the tablet toward him. Look at this. Have you ever seen a personnel file this heavily redacted? Brennan studied the screen. Only once. Special operations guys attached to our unit in Afghanistan. But they had proper credentials. Calloway's listed as a PFC with no combat deployments, which makes no sense given what we've witnessed. Grayson rubbed his eyes. I put in a request to battalion for her full file. Got kicked back immediately with a note saying I don't have sufficient clearance. You're a platoon leader. What clearance could be higher than? Exactly. Grayson's jaw tightened. So I went sideways. Called a buddy who works in personnel at division. Asked him to run her name through the system informally. He called me back 10 minutes ago. Told me to drop it. Said her file has flags on it that automatically notify certain offices when someone accesses it. He wouldn't say which offices. Brennan leaned back. Processing. Intel? Possibly. Or something else entirely. Grayson lowered his voice. He did tell me one thing before he hung up. He said that if I entered a specific search query, I might find something interesting in the archived operational reports. He gave me a call sign, Desert Serpent. The name hung in the air between them. Search it, Brennan said. Grayson typed carefully, fingers hovering over the enter key for a moment before pressing it. The results appeared slowly, loading through the encrypted military network. A single document, heavily redacted like everything else, but with enough visible text to tell a story. Redacted. Redacted. Approximately 4 years prior. Location. Redacted. Mountain region. Hostile territory. Objective. Redacted. Operational summary. Special reconnaissance team consisting of redacted personnel deployed to gather intelligence on redacted. Team was compromised on day 3 of operation, resulting in contact with numerically superior hostile force. Team leader Kia. Communications specialist WIA. Redacted assumed command despite being junior member of team. Conducted fighting withdrawal over 23 kilometers of mountainous terrain while under continuous enemy contact. Redacted utilized advanced marksmanship and terrain analysis to eliminate redacted hostile combatants while preserving team cohesion and preventing additional friendly casualties. Maintained defensive perimeter for 14 hours until extraction was possible. Call sign used. Desert Serpent. Commendations. Recommended for Silver Star. Recommendation withdrawn after internal review. Current status. Redacted. The document ended there. Brennan read it twice. She saved her team. Why was the commendation withdrawn? Keep reading. Grayson scrolled down to an addendum document dated 6 months later. Incident report, redacted. Following debriefing from Operation Redacted, discrepancies were noted in after-action reports regarding rules of engagement and authorized use of lethal force. Redacted was investigated for redacted. Investigation concluded that actions taken were necessary for team survival but exceeded parameters of original mission authorization. Redacted was offered option of court-martial or voluntary separation from special operations assignment. Subject chose voluntary separation, All records of specialized training and operational history were classified at TS/SCI level. Subject was reassigned to Standard Infantry Unit with rank reduction to Private First Class. Note: subject's current assignment should avoid any duties requiring independent decision-making under combat conditions. Recommend close supervision. Brennan sat back. They punished her for saving her team. They punished her for exceeding her authority, Grayson corrected, though his voice lacked conviction. There's probably more to it than what's written here. And now she's with us, acting as a PFC, following orders that she knows are wrong. Brennan looked toward the command post entrance, where Calloway sat alone in the darkness, monitoring the radio. That shot she made tonight, that wasn't luck. That was muscle memory from someone who's done it hundreds of times. Desert Serpent, Grayson murmured. Hell of a call sign for someone who's supposed to stay quiet and invisible. They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the night sounds of the desert wind, distant equipment noise, the low murmur of soldiers on watch. "What are you going to do?" Brennan finally asked. "I don't know. Right now, she's still under my command, still bound by my orders, but..." He trailed off, staring at the tablet screen. "If things go bad again, if we face another assault, like tonight, I need to decide whether I'm going to keep treating her like a trainee or trust that she knows what she's doing." She saved Corporal Hayes. The medic said if she hadn't spotted the bleeding when she did, Hayes would have died. "I know. She tried to warn us about this position being compromised. She was right. I know. So what's stopping you from listening to her?" Grayson closed the tablet with more force than necessary. "Because the moment I start taking tactical advice from a PFC, I've lost control of this platoon. Chain of command exists for a reason. So does common sense. Get out, Sergeant. That's an order." Brennan stood, ducked through the entrance, and found Calloway exactly where he'd expected, sitting cross-legged in the sand, rifle across her lap, staring into the darkness. He sat down beside her without asking permission. "Sergeant," she acknowledged, without looking at him. "I read your file. Or what's left of it." She didn't respond. "Desert Serpent. That's you." That was someone else. Her voice was flat. "A long time ago. 4 years isn't that long. It is when you're trying to forget." Brennan studied her profile in the starlight. "What happened up there? In the mountains? We got compromised. People died. I did what I had to do. And they punished you for it. They punished me for disobeying orders. There's a difference." She finally turned to look at him. "I was told to establish overwatch and observe, not to engage. But when they started executing hostages in front of us, I made a choice. You saved lives. I took lives without authorization. In the military, that's called exceeding your mandate." She turned back to the darkness. "They were right to discipline me. I knew the rules. I broke them anyway. Would you do it differently if you could go back?" She was quiet for a long moment. "No." "Then you made the right choice." "The right choice still has consequences, Sergeant. That's something they teach you in special operations, but forget to mention in basic training. Every trigger pull, every decision, every time you step outside the chain of command, it costs something. Sometimes it costs everything." They sat in silence, and Brennan realized he wasn't sitting next to a troubled private. He was sitting next to a warrior who'd been broken down and rebuilt as something lesser, forced to watch from the sidelines while others made mistakes she could prevent. "For what it's worth," he said finally, "I'm glad you're here, even if nobody else is." Calloway nodded once. "Get some sleep, Sergeant. Tomorrow's going to be worse than today." "How do you know?" "Because they're not done testing us yet. Tonight was reconnaissance in force. They know exactly how many of us there are now, what weapons we have, how we respond to pressure." She checked her watch. "They'll hit us again. Bigger force. Better coordinated. Probably right before dawn when we're most vulnerable. You should tell Grayson." "He won't listen." "Not to me." She adjusted the rifle on her lap. "But you could tell him. Make it sound like your own tactical assessment. I'm not going to take credit for your work. I don't need credit. I need this platoon to survive." She met his eyes again. "Pride doesn't matter out here, Sergeant. Only keeping people alive matters. If that means you tell Grayson it's your idea, so be it." Brennan stood, brushing sand from his uniform. You're a better soldier than most officers I've served under. That's why I'm a PFC now." She smiled slightly, the first expression of humor he'd seen from her. "Good night, Sergeant." He walked away, leaving Desert Serpent alone, in the darkness where she belonged, watching, waiting, ready for whatever came next. The night stretched cold and infinite. Calloway sat at the perimeter's edge, away from the others, away from the command post, away from the judgment in their eyes. They didn't understand. They couldn't. Most soldiers fought wars defined by clear rules, proper authorization, and chain of command that made sense. She'd fought a different kind of war. The memories came unbidden, as they always did during lonely hours when exhaustion lowered her defenses. The mountain operation. 4 years ago. A lifetime ago. They'd inserted at night, 6 of them, ghosts in the darkness, moving through terrain that wanted them dead. Her role had been simple: overwatch, observation, call out targets for the team leader, provide security from an elevated position, gather intelligence on enemy movements. Simple. Clean. Low risk. But intelligence was wrong. The village they were observing wasn't just a supply point. It was an execution site. She'd watched through her scope as they brought out the first hostage, a local teacher who'd cooperated with coalition forces. They made him kneel, made him beg. Then they shot him in the back of the head while a crowd of coerced villagers watched. Her team leader's voice in her earpiece. "Hold position. Do not engage. We're here to observe, not interfere. Those are the orders." Then they brought out the second hostage. A woman, young, pregnant, request permission to engage. Her own voice, steady despite the rage building in her chest. "Negative, Serpent. Hold your position. We document, we report, we extract. That's the mission." They're executing civilians. "We've documented 3 execution sites already. This doesn't change anything. Hold your position." The woman was crying, pleading with her captors in a language Calloway didn't speak but understood perfectly. "Please, mercy, think of my child." They didn't think of her child. Calloway squeezed her eyes shut now, sitting in the desert 4 years later, but she could still see it. Could still see the woman fall. Could still see them drag out the third hostage. A boy, maybe 12 years old. His father had been the teacher they'd executed first. "Serpent, this is lead. Do not engage. That is a direct order." She'd clicked off her radio. 3 shots. 3 dead executioners. She'd reloaded and put suppressing fire on the remaining hostiles, allowing the villagers to scatter, giving them time to escape into the mountains. The enemy response had been immediate and overwhelming. They'd known coalition forces were in the area but hadn't pinpointed the location. Her shots gave them a target. 23 kilometers of fighting withdrawal. Team leader killed in the initial contact. Communications specialist took a round through his shoulder. She'd assumed command not because she wanted to, but because she was the only one still combat effective. 14 hours of continuous engagement. Keeping her team alive. Keeping them moving. Every ridge was another firefight. Every valley was another potential ambush. She'd burned through 800 rounds of ammunition and stopped counting her kills after 30. They'd extracted at dawn, helicopter landing in a hot LZ, while she provided cover fire from a collapsed building, its walls pocked with bullet holes, roof half-caved from mortar strikes. She'd been the last one on the bird. The inquiry had started before they even landed at base. "You disobeyed a direct order. I prevented a war crime. You endangered your team. I saved civilians who would have been executed. You exceeded your mission parameters. I did what was right. Right isn't your decision to make, soldier. We have rules of engagement for a reason. We have command structure for a reason. You don't get to decide when orders no longer apply." They'd given her a choice: court-martial with potential prison time, or voluntary separation from special operations with rank reduction. Take the deal and disappear, or fight it and destroy what remained of her career. She'd taken the deal. Everything she'd trained for, everything she'd become, stripped away with a few signatures and some redacted files. Desert Serpent died quietly, buried in classified reports that would never see daylight. And now she sat in another desert, watching another group of soldiers make tactical mistakes she could see coming kilometers away. unable to do anything except watch and wait for permission to act. Couldn't sleep either? She turned. Valdez approached, carrying 2 canteen cups of coffee, the instant kind that tasted like dirt but provided precious caffeine. Offering one to me? Calloway asked. Figured you could use it. Valdez sat down, handed over 1 cup. You've been out here alone for 3 hours. I don't sleep much. Yeah, I'm starting to get that impression. Valdez sipped her coffee, grimacing at the taste. So, Desert Serpent, that's what they called you? Calloway's eyes narrowed. Sergeant Brennan told you. He didn't have to. After that shot you made, I ran a search on the database. Found the same stuff he and the LT found. Valdez turned to look at her directly. You saved your whole team. They should have given you a medal, not a demotion. The situation was more complicated than that. I read the report. What I could read of it, anyway, seemed pretty straightforward to me. Bad guys were executing civilians. You stopped them. Team got compromised, but everyone survived because you led the withdrawal. Valdez shook her head. Where I come from, that's called being a hero. Where I come from, that's called insubordination. Screw that. You did the right thing. Calloway was quiet for a moment, staring into her coffee. The boy survived. The one they were about to execute. He made it to the mountains with the other villagers. I got a letter from him 2 years later, forwarded through about 6 different intelligence channels before someone decided to let me see it. She smiled faintly. He's in university now, studying engineering, wants to rebuild his village. See? You saved his life. I also got my team leader killed. Got my communications specialist crippled. He lost use of his left arm. Put everyone at risk, because I couldn't follow orders. You mean because you have a conscience? Conscience doesn't matter in special operations. Only the mission matters. Only completing the objective matters. Personal feelings, moral judgments, those are luxuries for people who aren't operating behind enemy lines with no support and no backup. Valdez was quiet, processing that. Then, do you regret it? Every day. Calloway looked up at the stars. But I'd do it again. That's the problem. I'd always do it again. Which means I can't be trusted in situations that require absolute adherence to orders. Which means I belong exactly where I am, following simple commands, doing basic tasks, staying out of everyone's way. That's bullshit and you know it. Maybe. But it's also reality. She drained her coffee. Thanks for the drink, specialist. You should get some rest. Are they really going to hit us again? Before dawn? Calloway nodded slowly. They'll come in force this time. Multiple assault teams, probably some indirect fire support. They know we're undersupplied and can't get artillery support quickly. They'll try to overrun our position before we can get reinforcements. Grayson needs to know. He does know, Brennan told him. But changing defensive positions now would mean admitting his original decision was wrong, and some officers would rather risk casualties than admit mistakes. That's insane. That's pride. Calloway stood, stretching stiff muscles. Get some sleep, Valdez. When they hit us, I need you sharp. What about you? I'll be ready. I'm always ready. Valdez left, glancing back once with an expression that might have been respect or might have been pity. Calloway couldn't tell the difference anymore. She returned to her position, checked her rifle for the 100th time, and watched the eastern horizon for signs of movement that she knew would come. The desert night was never truly silent. Wind whispered across sand. Equipment creaked. Somewhere, a soldier coughed. The radio hissed with static. And underneath it all, the sound of her own breathing, steady and controlled, the rhythm of someone who'd learned long ago that sleep was a luxury she couldn't afford. Desert Serpent didn't sleep. She hunted. The assault began at 05:15, 45 minutes before sunrise. Mortar rounds fell first, impacting with systematic precision around the defensive perimeter. Not random harassment fire, this was deliberate targeting, walking explosions inward to pin the defenders in place. Incoming, the cry went up simultaneously from multiple positions. Calloway was already moving, sprinting toward the command post in a low crouch. She found Grayson shouting into the radio handset, face illuminated by the dim glow of his tactical display. Battalion, this is Viper 2-1. We are under heavy indirect fire. Request immediate counter-battery mission. Over. Viper 2-1, Battalion, no artillery available. Air support is 45 minutes out. Recommend you hold position and... The transmission cut off as another mortar round impacted nearby, showering the command post with sand and rock fragments. Grayson slammed the handset down. We're on our own. They're coming from 3 directions, Calloway said, appearing beside him. North, east, and southeast. Estimate 50 to 70 hostiles total. They'll use the mortar fire to close within assault distance, then rush the position simultaneously. I didn't ask for your analysis. You need it anyway. Sir, this position is indefensible against that many attackers. We need to consolidate, fall back to. We're not abandoning our grid square. Then we're going to die here. Grayson whirled on her, eyes blazing. If you can't follow orders, Calloway, I will have you restrained and... An explosion cut him off, larger than the others, impacting directly on their southern perimeter. The command post filled with smoke and the screaming of wounded soldiers. Hayes is down again, someone shouted. Alvarez too. We need a medic. Southside's collapsing, another voice called. They're in the wire. Grayson grabbed the radio again, but froze, staring at the tactical display. 3 red arrows converging on their position. 50+ hostiles, no support, limited ammunition, and now casualties mounting. Calloway watched him struggle with the decision. Watched him realize that pride and regulations meant nothing when facing annihilation. What do you recommend? He finally asked, voice tight. Give me tactical control of the defensive fire. You handle casualty evacuation and coordinate with battalion for extraction. We can't win this fight, but we can make them pay for every meter they advance. You're a PFC. I can't just... You can court-martial me later. Right now, you need someone who knows how to fight outnumbered. She met his eyes. You know what I am, Lieutenant. You've read the reports. Let me do my job. Another explosion. More screaming. The smell of burning equipment and blood. Do it, Grayson said. Just keep them alive. Calloway snatched up the tactical radio and switched to the platoon net. Her voice came out cold and clear, cutting through the chaos. All positions. This is Calloway. I have tactical control of defensive fire. Acknowledge. Silence. Then, one by one, the squad leaders responded. North position. Acknowledged. East position. Acknowledged. South position. What's left of it? Acknowledged. Good. Listen carefully because I will say this once. North position. Shift your fire 30 degrees right. The mortar crew is using the ridgeline for cover. I need you to suppress them, not the assault team. Aim for the high ground. Copy. East position. You're going to see movement in about 20 seconds. Do not engage. There's scouts trying to draw fire and identify our positions. Let them pass. Let them pass? Are you... Do not engage. That's an order. When the main assault comes, you'll know. They'll be firing RPGs and heavy machine guns. Those are your targets. Copy. South position. Pull back 15 meters to the secondary fighting positions. Your current location is pre-registered for their mortars. Move now. We can't just move or die. Your choice. Hesitation. Then, moving. Calloway dropped the radio and picked up her rifle. Climbing onto the highest point of the command post, a stack of supply crates covered with sandbags. Exposed, but offering a clear view of the entire battlefield. Brennan appeared below her. What are you doing? My job. Protect the command post. I'm going to draw some attention. You'll get killed up there. Maybe. But I'll take enough of them with me to give you a chance. She chambered around. Now move. I need clear sight lines. He moved. The mortar fire stopped abruptly. A signal. The assault teams would be moving now, closing the distance under cover of the lingering smoke and dust. Calloway controlled her breathing, letting her heart rate slow despite the adrenaline. She scanned the terrain systematically, looking for movement, for patterns, for the telltale signs of advancing infantry. There. Northeast, 400 meters. 3 figures moving in tactical formation toward the perimeter. She fired. 1 down. Adjusted. Fired. 2 down. The 3rd figure dove for cover. Contact northeast, she called over the radio. 400 meters. Multiple targets advancing on north position, but she was already looking elsewhere. East sector. 2 technical vehicles approaching fast, weapons mounted and firing, 800 meters and closing. East position. Technical vehicles inbound. Engage the gunners first, not the drivers. She lined up her shot, led the target slightly, controlled her breathing, fired. The gunner on the lead technical collapsed. The weapon went silent. Second vehicle. Different gunner. Harder shot because they'd seen what happened to the first crew. Fired. Miss. The round sparked off the vehicle's frame. Adjusted. Breathe. Fired. The second gunner fell. The vehicles swerved apart, drivers realizing they were being engaged by precision fire from an elevated position. Good. That would slow them down. South sector. The assault team there was larger, maybe 20 fighters, rushing the partially collapsed defensive line. South position, fall back to Rally Point Alpha, fighting withdrawal, alternate teams covering. The southern defenders peeled back in good order, laying down suppressing fire while moving, not a rout, a controlled retreat. The assault team pressed forward, emboldened by the apparent retreat. Calloway adjusted her position, picked her targets carefully. Not the lead elements, they'd just be replaced. The leaders, the ones in back directing the assault. 3 shots. 3 figures fell. The assault momentum faltered. North position, shift fire to south sector, crossfire pattern, do it now. The northern defenders repositioned, catching the southern assault team in a devastating crossfire. Bodies fell. The attack broke, survivors scattering back into cover. Cease fire, Calloway ordered. Conserve ammunition. Watch for secondary assault. She reloaded, scanning the battlefield again. 7 minutes of engagement. They'd stopped the initial assault, but this was far from over. The enemy was regrouping, reassessing, preparing for another attempt. Her radio crackled. Calloway, this is Grayson. We have 4 wounded, 2 critical. I've called for emergency medevac, but it's 20 minutes out. Copy. Hold the casualties at Rally Point Alpha. That's the safest location right now. What's your ammunition status? She checked her pouches. 60 rounds remaining. I've been selective. How many did you drop? 13 confirmed. Silence on the radio. Then, Jesus Christ. It's not over, sir. They'll regroup and hit us again, probably within 10 minutes. We need to establish fallback positions and... A new sound cut through the dawn air. Helicopter rotors. Viper 2-1. This is Reaper 6-5. We're inbound with your medevac and reinforcements. Pop smoke for identification. Reinforcements. They'd survived long enough for help to arrive. Grayson's voice came over the radio. Lighter now, infused with relief. All positions, mark LZ with purple smoke. Prepare for friendly helicopter landing. Calloway climbed down from her elevated position as purple smoke billowed across the defensive perimeter. The helicopter swept in fast and low, door gunners scanning for threats. It touched down for exactly 90 seconds, long enough to load the wounded, drop off 6 fresh soldiers and 4 crates of ammunition, then lift off again in a storm of rotor wash and sand. The enemy assault never came. Faced with reinforcements and the presence of helicopter support, they withdrew, melting back into the desert from which they'd emerged. By the time the sun fully rose, casting golden light across the battered defensive position, the battle was over. But everyone knew who'd won it. The debriefing took place in a hastily erected tent at the battalion command post, 5 kilometers from Grid 7. Lieutenant Grayson stood before a map board, pointer in hand, explaining the engagement to Major Patricia Rollins, battalion commander. The enemy assault began with concentrated indirect fire at 05:15, Grayson said. They coordinated attacks from 3 directions simultaneously, attempting to overwhelm our defensive position. Casualties? Rollins asked. 4 wounded, 2 critical but stable. No KIA. Considering the size of the enemy force, our losses were minimal. How minimal? Intelligence estimates put the attacking force at 70+ hostiles. That's correct, ma'am. And you held them off with a single platoon? Yes, ma'am. Rollins studied the map, frowning. Walk me through your defensive tactics. Grayson hesitated. This was the moment. He could take credit, file a report that made him look like a tactical genius, advance his career, or he could tell the truth. He glanced toward the back of the tent, where Calloway sat alone, rifle propped beside her, expression unreadable. "I didn't win that fight, Major," Grayson said quietly. "She did." Rollins followed his gaze. "Who is she?" "PFC Calloway, our augment. She took tactical control of the defensive fire during the engagement. A private first class assumed command. I gave her permission. She has unique qualifications, such as she's Desert Serpent." The tent went absolutely silent. Rollins's expression shifted from confusion to recognition to something that might have been respect or fear. "You're telling me that Desert Serpent, the operator who disappeared 4 years ago, has been serving in your platoon as a PFC?" "Yes, ma'am. I accessed her classified file last night after observing her performance in previous contacts. Her record is extraordinary." "Her record is classified for good reason, Lieutenant." Rollins moved to the tent entrance, dismissing the aide standing there, then sealed the flap. "What I'm about to tell you does not leave this tent. Understood?" "Yes, ma'am." 4 years ago, during Operation Cold Stone, a reconnaissance team was compromised in hostile territory. The team leader was killed. A junior operator call-signed Desert Serpent assumed command and conducted a fighting withdrawal that became legendary in special operations circles. Rollins paused. "She eliminated 37 enemy combatants over a 14-hour period while keeping her team alive. 37. Most of them precision shots at ranges exceeding 600 meters. Grayson felt his mouth go dry. When they debriefed her, the Special Operations Command wanted to know how she did it. Know what she told them? She said it was easy. You just had to not miss. Rollins shook her head. They ran her through every evaluation, every psychological screening. She wasn't unstable, wasn't traumatized. She was just better at killing than anyone they'd ever trained. And that terrified them. The inquiry wasn't about disobeying orders, Grayson realized. The inquiry was about what to do with a soldier who exceeded every parameter of normal human performance. They couldn't promote her, she was too junior, too unpredictable. Couldn't keep her in special operations, she'd proven she'd act independently when she disagreed with orders. Couldn't discharge her waste of talent. So they buried her, stripped her rank, reassigned her to standard infantry, and hoped she'd fade into obscurity. Why not just let her go? Because soldiers like her don't exist outside the military. She'd be dangerous as a civilian. At least here, we can monitor her, control her, keep her pointed in the right direction. Rollins looked toward the tent flap, toward where Calloway waited. She's been serving as a regular PFC for 4 years, following orders, staying quiet, until today. She saved my platoon. She saved your platoon by doing exactly what got her demoted in the first place, taking command without authorization and engaging targets using her own judgment. Rollins rubbed her temple. I'm going to have to report this. Once word gets out that Desert Serpent is operational again, certain people are going to want her back. Others are going to want her buried deeper. It's going to be a political nightmare. With respect, ma'am, I don't care about the politics. That soldier fought brilliantly under conditions that should have resulted in mass casualties. She deserves recognition. What she deserves and what she'll get are two very different things, Lieutenant. Rollins moved to the tent entrance. Send her in. I want to speak with her directly. Grayson stepped outside and found Calloway exactly where he'd left her, sitting in the sand, cleaning her rifle with methodical precision. Major wants to see you. She nodded, stood, and followed him into the tent without comment. Rollins studied her for a long moment. Desert Serpent. I've heard stories about you. I'm sure you have, ma'am. Are they true? Probably not. Stories tend to get exaggerated. Lieutenant Grayson tells me you eliminated 13 hostiles during this morning's engagement. 14. There was one more after the helicopter arrived. Sniper, in an overwatch position, about to engage the LZ. I handled it. 14 confirmed kills in approximately 7 minutes of combat. Yes, ma'am. Did you miss any shots? Calloway was quiet for a moment. 2. The technical gunner required a follow-up shot because I didn't compensate properly for vehicle movement. So you're saying your accuracy rate was 93%? 93.3%, accounting for the follow-up shot as a single engagement. Rollins laughed, a short, sharp sound. Jesus. They really did bury a legend in the ranks. She circled Calloway slowly, assessing. Why didn't you just leave? Take a discharge. Go civilian? Leave all of this behind? Because this is what I am, ma'am. Take away the uniform. I'm just someone good at killing people. At least here, I can kill the right people. That's a hell of a way to look at your career. It's an honest way. Rollins stopped circling. I'm going to ask you a question, and I want a truthful answer. Can you follow orders? Can you operate under command authority without going rogue when you disagree with tactical decisions? No, ma'am. The blunt honesty seemed to catch Rollins off guard. You're admitting you can't follow orders? I'm admitting that when I see people about to die because of bad decisions, I'll intervene, every time. Without hesitation, I can't turn that off. I've tried. Calloway met the Major's eyes directly. So if you're asking whether I'll be a good, obedient soldier who does what she's told and doesn't question authority, the answer is no. But if you're asking whether I'll keep people alive and complete the mission, the answer is yes. Always. That's exactly what I was afraid of. Rollins turned away, hands clasped behind her back. You're a liability, Calloway. An exceptionally talented liability, but a liability nonetheless. The moment I put you back in a combat role, you become my responsibility, and I can't afford to have a soldier who picks and chooses which orders to follow. I understand, ma'am. Do you? Because I don't think you do. You're too damn good at what you do. That's your curse. If you were average, we could just discharge you and be done with it. But you're not average. You're a strategic asset that we can't use because using you means accepting that sometimes you'll do things your own way. Rollins turned back. I'm sending you back to your unit, as a PFC, with a note in your file that you performed adequately during the engagement. Nothing more. Thank you, ma'am. Don't thank me. I'm not doing you any favors. I'm burying you again, because that's the only way to keep everyone safe, including you. Calloway nodded once and turned to leave. Serpent, Rollins called after her. She paused at the tent entrance. For what it's worth. That thing you did this morning, taking command, organizing the defense, keeping all those soldiers alive, that was extraordinary. You should know that, even if no one else will ever acknowledge it. I don't need acknowledgement, ma'am. I just need people to go home alive. She left the tent. Outside, Brennan and Valdez were waiting. What did she say? Valdez asked. She said I performed adequately. Adequately? Brennan's voice rose. You saved the entire platoon. That's not how the report will read, and that's fine. I don't need credit. I need all of you to survive. She picked up her rifle. Come on, we're moving to a new position. The war doesn't stop for debriefings. She walked away, and they fell in behind her, the legend who'd been buried and resurrected, who'd fought brilliantly and asked for nothing in return. Desert Serpent was awake again, and the desert would never forget her name. 3 days later, the platoon occupied a relatively secure position near a forward operating base. The intensity of combat operations had decreased. They'd transitioned to patrol duty, area security, and the tedious routine of military occupation. Calloway sat alone as she always did, cleaning her rifle for the 3rd time that day. Not because it was dirty, but because the routine gave her something to focus on besides the memories. Hendricks approached, hesitant, carrying a folded piece of paper. Hey, Calloway? She looked up. Corporal. I wanted to. We all wanted to. He trailed off, struggling. Thank you for what you did. Most of us wouldn't be here if you hadn't taken command. Just doing my job. No, you did a lot more than your job. You saved our lives. He held out the paper. We all signed this. It's a letter of commendation. We're going to submit it to battalion, requesting you be recognized for. Don't. She didn't take the paper. What? Don't submit that letter. Don't put my name on any official documents. Don't draw attention to what happened. But you deserve recognition. You deserve to be promoted, to get your rank back, I deserve to be left alone. She returned to cleaning her rifle. The moment you submit that letter, people will start asking questions. They'll pull my file. They'll remember who I was. And then they'll make me into something I don't want to be anymore. I don't understand. She set down the cleaning rod and looked at him directly. 4 years ago, I was a weapon, a tool, Someone pointed me at a target and I eliminated it. No questions, no hesitation, no conscience. I was very good at it. So good that it scared the people giving orders, because they realized I didn't need them. I could identify threats and eliminate them faster and more efficiently than any command structure could authorize. That sounds like a good thing. It sounds like someone who can't be controlled. And the military, any military, runs on control, on hierarchy, on following orders, even when those orders are stupid or wasteful or get people killed. She picked up the cleaning rod again. So they took away my rank and buried me in the system. And you know what? They were right to do it. Because I can't follow orders I disagree with. I physically can't do it. Which makes me dangerous to everyone around me. Hendricks was quiet for a moment. You saved us. This time. But what about next time, when my judgment is wrong? What happens when I take command and make a mistake that gets people killed? What happens when I'm so confident in my abilities that I stop listening to anyone else? She met his eyes. I've seen what happens to people like me, Hendricks. We either burn out or become monsters. Sometimes both. The only reason I've lasted this long is because I accepted my limitations and stepped back. So you're just going to stay a PFC forever? Keep your head down, never use your skills, pretend you're not one of the best soldiers in the entire military? Yes. Because the alternative is worse. He stood there, struggling with the concept, the letter still in his hand. Finally, he set it down beside her. I'm leaving this here. What you do with it is your choice. But everyone in this platoon knows what you did. Everyone knows who you really are. Desert Serpent isn't just a call sign, it's who you are. No, she said quietly, it's who I was. There's a difference. He left, and she picked up the letter, unfolding it carefully. The signatures covered the entire page. Every member of the platoon had signed. Some had added short messages. You saved my life. Thank you, Valdez. Never seen anything like it. Honored to serve with you. Brennan. You're a legend. Don't let anyone tell you different. Hayes. She read each message, felt something tighten in her chest, then carefully refolded the letter and tucked it into her pocket. She wouldn't submit it, but she'd keep it. That evening, she sat alone at the perimeter again, watching the sunset paint the desert in impossible colors. Footsteps approached from behind. She didn't turn around. You were right, Grayson said, settling onto the sandbag beside her. About everything. The position being compromised, the enemy tactics, the timing of their assault. You called it all exactly right. Yes, sir. I should have listened to you from the beginning. Yes, sir. I let my pride override my judgment. That's a failure of leadership. It's a common failure, sir. Most officers make the same mistake at least once. Is that supposed to make me feel better? No, sir. Just stating a fact. They sat in silence, watching the sun sink toward the horizon. Major Rollins called me this morning, Grayson said. Wanted to know if you were causing any problems. I told her you were performing your duties adequately. Thank you, sir. She also told me some of your history. Not all of it. Most of it's still classified, but enough for me to understand why you are the way you are. He turned to look at her. They took something extraordinary and tried to make it ordinary. That must have been difficult. It was necessary, was it? Or was it just easier for them to bury you than to figure out how to properly utilize your capabilities? She didn't answer. For what it's worth, Grayson continued, I'm putting in my report that you performed exceptionally during the engagement. Not adequately. Exceptionally. I don't care what Rollins says. The truth matters. The truth is dangerous, sir. For both of us. I know, but it's still the truth. He stood, brushing sand from his uniform. You asked me once if I would trust you when things went bad. The answer is yes. Next time, if there is a next time, I'll listen. You have my word. There's always a next time, sir. That's the nature of war. Then I guess we'll face it together. He started to walk away, then paused. One more thing. That call sign Desert Serpent. I looked up the meaning. Serpents in desert cultures are symbols of survival, adaptation, and lethal precision. They strike without warning and never miss. It's a good call sign. It's a dead call sign, sir. That person doesn't exist anymore. Doesn't she? He gestured toward the defensive position, toward the soldiers moving through their routines, alive because of her actions. Because, from where I'm standing, Desert Serpent just saved an entire platoon. Seems pretty alive to me. He left her alone with the sunset and her thoughts. That night, she dreamed of mountains and gunfire, of choices made and prices paid. She woke before dawn, as she always did, and found the camp still and quiet. But on the radio left on the command frequency overnight, a transmission crackled through. Any station, this is Reaper 6-1. We have a situation developing in Grid 12. Multiple hostile contacts. Requesting experienced sniper support. Anyone with precision engagement capability, please respond. Calloway stared at the radio for a long moment. She could ignore it. Stay silent. Let someone else handle it. Or, she reached for the handset. Hesitated, then clicked the transmit button. Reaper 6-1 this is. She paused, considering. Then, this is Desert Serpent. I have precision engagement capability. Send coordinates. The radio went silent for several seconds. Then, Desert Serpent, confirm your call sign. Confirmed. Send coordinates. Copy. Desert Serpent, coordinates incoming. And, it's good to have you back on the net. She copied down the grid coordinates, checked her rifle, and moved to wake Grayson. The sun hadn't risen yet, but Desert Serpent was already hunting. The operation in Grid 12 lasted 6 hours. 3 sniper positions, 42 targets identified, 42 eliminated, 0 friendly casualties. By the time Calloway returned to base, word had spread throughout the battalion. Desert Serpent was operational again. The legend had returned. She found Major Rollins waiting outside the operations tent. "We need to talk," the major said. They walked to a quiet area behind the supply depot, away from curious ears. "I told you to stay buried," Rollins said, voice tight. "You told me I performed adequately. I performed adequately. You used your old call sign on an open radio net. You engaged in a precision sniper operation without authorization. I saved 17 soldiers who were pinned down by superior forces. I completed the mission with 0 collateral damage and no expenditure of battalion resources beyond my ammunition. By any metric, that's a successful operation." "That's not the point." "Then what is the point, ma'am?" Calloway's voice remained calm, but something had changed in her bearing. She stood straighter, spoke with more authority. "You want to bury me because I'm inconvenient, because I don't fit neatly into the hierarchy, because I make command decisions that should be made by officers. But here's the thing, I'm good at what I do, better than anyone else. And people are alive today because I refuse to stay buried. You're insubordinate. I'm effective. There's a difference." Rollins stared at her for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed. "God, you're exactly like they said you were. Completely unmanageable, absolutely brilliant, totally convinced of your own righteousness. I'm not convinced of anything except my ability to keep people alive." "That's the same thing." Rollins pulled out a folder, handed it over. "This came down from Division this morning. Special Operations Command has been monitoring your recent activity. They want you back." Calloway opened the folder. Restoration of rank, specialized training assignment, return to operational status. Everything she'd lost 4 years ago, offered back with full reinstatement. She closed the folder and handed it back. "What are you doing?" Rollins asked. "Declining. You're declining a promotion? A return to special operations? A chance to be what you were always meant to be? I'm declining the opportunity to become a weapon again. I did that once. It nearly destroyed me. I won't do it again. So what will you do? Stay here. Keep the rank I have. Serve where I'm needed." She looked toward the defensive positions, where her platoon was visible in the distance. These soldiers don't need Desert Serpent. They need someone who'll watch their backs, provide accurate fire support, and help them survive. That's enough. That's insane. You're wasting your potential. I'm using my potential exactly how I choose to use it. That's the first real choice I've made in 4 years. Rollins studied her, then shook her head slowly. "You know what's going to happen. They'll send people to convince you, offer you incentives, maybe even try to order you back into special operations. Let them try. I'm done being told who I am." Calloway turned to walk away, then paused. "Permission to speak freely, ma'am?" "Granted. 4 years ago, you buried a soldier who refused to follow orders she disagreed with. Today, that same soldier just proved that sometimes disobeying orders is the right thing to do. Maybe the problem isn't with the soldier. Maybe it's with a system that values obedience over effectiveness. Careful, Calloway. That kind of talk can end careers. My career ended 4 years ago. Everything since then has been borrowed time. She smiled slightly. I'm just trying to use it well. She left Rollins standing there, folder in hand, and walked back toward her platoon. Brennan saw her coming and jogged over. Heard you got called to operations. Everything okay? Everything's fine. They offered me a promotion. That's great. When do you transfer? I don't. I declined. He stopped walking. You... What? I'm staying here. With the platoon. As a PFC. Why would you do that? Because this is where I belong. Not as some legend or special operator. Just as someone who does her job and helps people stay alive. That's enough. Valdez approached, having overheard. You're seriously turning down a promotion to stay with us? Is that surprising? It's insane. You could be. I don't know. Running special missions, training other snipers, doing important stuff. This is important stuff. Keeping you all alive is the most important thing I could be doing. They stood there, processing that, until Hendricks called out from the defensive line. Calloway, you're needed at the perimeter. Someone's asking for Desert Serpent. She sighed. The call sign's going to be a problem. You could always use your real name, Brennan suggested. People keep forgetting to ask what that is. What is it? She paused, considering whether to answer. Then, Jessica Calloway. Jessica. Valdez tried it out. I like it. It's normal. I am normal. Just a soldier who happens to be good at a very specific job. The best, Brennan corrected. You're the best at what you do. Maybe. But being the best doesn't mean much if you're alone. I'd rather be adequate and surrounded by people who watch my back. She started walking toward the perimeter. Come on. Apparently, someone needs Desert Serpent's help. Let's go see what they want. They followed her, and other members of the platoon fell in behind, forming an impromptu squad, not because she ordered it, but because they chose to. Because in 3 days, she'd proven herself not just as a legendary operator, but as someone who'd fight for them without hesitation. The sun was fully up now, burning away the last shadows of night. The desert stretched endlessly, unforgiving and beautiful and deadly. And walking across it, rifle on her shoulder, was a soldier who'd been buried and resurrected, who'd fought brilliantly and asked for nothing, who'd been offered everything, and chosen simplicity instead. Jessica Calloway, call sign Desert Serpent, Private First Class. No longer a trainee. Just a soldier who refused to miss. 6 weeks later, the platoon rotated home. They loaded onto transport aircraft, leaving the desert behind, carrying wounds both visible and hidden, stories both told and kept secret. On the final day, before departure, Grayson found Calloway one last time, sitting alone at the perimeter where she'd always sat, staring out at the sand. We're loading up, he said. Time to go home. I know. You coming? In a minute. She didn't look at him, just saying goodbye. To what? To her. To Desert Serpent. I'm leaving her here, where she belongs. When we get back, I'm just Jessica. No legend, no call sign, just another soldier. The military doesn't work that way. People know who you are now. They'll remember. Let them remember. I won't. She stood, brushing sand from her uniform one final time. Are you staying in, sir? After this deployment? Thinking about it. Why? Because if you do, I'd like to request assignment to whatever unit you're commanding. You're a good officer. You learn. That's rare. I'll see what I can do. He extended his hand. It's been an honor serving with you, Jessica. She shook it. The honor was mine, sir. They walked back to the aircraft together, leaving the desert behind but carrying its lessons forward. On the radio net now empty, abandoned, soon to be taken over by the next unit, rotating in a single transmission echoed across the frequencies before fading into static. Desert Serpent, departing station. Net is clear. And then, silence. The desert kept its secrets, but it would never forget the soldier who'd moved through it like a shadow, striking without warning, protecting the living, and asking for nothing except the chance to do it all again. They called her a trainee. They were